until he can actually give people results, it will be a very brave, almost reckless move to have an election.
Now, in his column in today's Times, Fraser Nelson argues that Sir Keir Starmer ended up defined by his failures and seemed unable to celebrate his successes. He left office with immigration at a 20-year low and violent crime now at its lowest for 25 years. Can Andy Burnham sell that good news to the public? Fraser joins us now. Fraser, good morning.
Hi, Rosie.
Why do you think Keir Starmer failed to tell that story of success?
I think it wasn't the success he wanted. Keir Starmer
Wanted to get waiting lists down, child poverty down, growth going. None of that actually happened, but he ended up, rather to his embarrassments, very different sort of successes. He was able to use Brexit's powers to get immigration down. And I say in my column that national insurance registrations were actually the lowest for 20 years at the beginning of this year. Now, that's something he never mentioned. You'd think he'd be shouting that from the rooftops if he wanted to fight reform. So I think Starmer was a very poor communicator, but also the successes he got weren't the successes that he wanted.
So what do you mean by that? What do you think he felt awkward to talk about immigration or didn't want that to be the focus of attention?
Yeah, I do think he was squeamish about immigration. I think quite often you get politicians on the left believing this is a fundamentally right-wing subject. Now, you don't get that in Denmark. The Social Democrats are very good there at sounding very tough on immigration. But I think that he was most comfortable talking about things that he wasn't really getting right. To Andy Burnham, for example, he used Brexit powers to cut VAT on electricity. That wasn't possible under the EU. And so he's been more keen to use these sort of powers that Starmer, I think, always was a little bit wary about.
Andy Burnham is, you say, trying to talk up the UK and its prospects.
Yeah, now, you can get a bigger contrast between Keir Starmer, who was all doom and gloom in his first few months. Andy Burnham is just like the national morale raiser. Every single day, we've had some kind of 6 a.m. announcement about tax cuts for this, tax cuts for that, abolishing ID cards, abolishing the prisoner early release. So he's wanted to give good news on an almost biblical scale, the first day, the second day, the third day. So it's gone. Now, perhaps in the same way that Keir Starmer seems to have talked down Britain's economic prospects in his first few months, perhaps Starmer wants to do the converse. Perhaps he wants to talk them up, and he's starting now.
Yeah. For how long do you think does this sort of very glowy honeymoon period last for Andy Burnham?
Oh, until the budget. I think the big question is who's going to pay for all of this. Of course, Keir Starmer would have wanted to cut taxes. He didn't because he didn't think that he could. So when we get what's being known as the Red October budget, now, if he basically rinses the South to pay for the North, then the honeymoon will be over. So these things always sound great until the bill arrives. That's politics for you. I guess we're waiting now for that bill to arrive.
Yeah, we are. And as has been discussed at length on the Breakfast programme and across Times Radio over the week, you know, when we've heard these announcements like the £2 cap on bus fares, it's not completely added up yet as to how these what looks like eye-catching policies are going to be paid for. We are hearing rumours, or I've heard a few rumours, Fraser, of people sort of speculating to say, right, Andy Burnham is up in the polls, he's having sort of a confident start. If he can cling on to this for a little bit longer, might he call a general election?
No.
Yeah. Well, of course, you know, they all say they do it and then they end up. Gordon Brown tried to, he chickened out of it. Theresa May did, calamitously. I don't think that Andy Burnham would, because he will realise that even if he's a few points up in the polls, reform is still so high ahead that I can't see any plausible scenario where he would win a majority in this year. I would say there's about, 15% chance of an election this year, 30% chance next year. But Andy Burnham's still got 3 years ahead of him. That's quite a lot of time to make a change. If I were him, I think you'd realise that people want more than just cheery, chappy social media videos. They want to get results. Until he can actually give people results, it will be a very brave, almost reckless move to have an election. Now, by the way, I think he can get results. I think that the immigration control message hasn't really filtered down. It will start to do that soon. This time next year, I think there's a reasonable chance of Andy Burnham having a story to tell, and a reasonable chance, if he keeps on this trajectory of cutting taxes, of getting rid of wasteful schemes, I can't see why Labour shouldn't be firmly back in the game at the next election.
And how much of a problem is this currently for the Conservatives? So this week, two of the things we've heard from Andy Burnham, that he's cutting VAT on energy bills, household energy bills, as you mentioned, and then yesterday is eager to expand drilling for oil and gas in the North Sea. Those are two things the Conservatives have been pushing for. It becomes more difficult for them, doesn't it, if they get a new person leading the Labour Party who seems more popular with the public and also is prepared to take on some Conservative ideas?
Well, of course, I mean, a popular new leader will be a challenge for all the opposition parties, certainly for Kemi Badenoch. I mean, she'll be saying, you wait until the bill comes in, you'll be thinking very differently. But there's no doubt about it that he is, wearing Tory clothes here. That £2 bus cap, which, by the way, I thought was a bad idea in the Tory manifesto, he's now implementing. But if you look at the small print, he's only really talking about 2 oil and gas fields. He isn't talking about lifting the Labour ban on new North Sea licensing. So, and also, again, when you look at the pub tax cut, it's welcome. But out of every £100 spent in a pub, the government takes 26 quid. The landlord, I think, gets £1.33. Burnham's going to make that £1.44. I mean, that's, a step in the right direction. But these are still quite small amounts. I think there's plenty to get into a fight about at the next election.
Very quickly, Fraser, seeing that you've mentioned pubs and social media videos. I'm not sure if you've seen the video of
haven't we all?
Andy Burnham and John Healey ranking their top 5 pub snacks. Is it a gimmick? Is it useful? I mean, is there merit in it? This social media strategy has paid dividends for him.
Well, yeah, but if you look around the world right now, you see there's 2 sorts of leaders. You've got the ones leading into the big personality, Trump, Maloney, Boris Johnson did this too. And then you get the kind of establishment types leaning against it. So Schultz in Germany, Carney in Canada, Keir Starmer in London. Now, Andy Burnham left Westminster as a kind of fairly standard machine politician after 24 years service. He's now come back, reinvented, as a character, one who communicates through short-form videos, which are, of course, the medium of our time. And he's doing it quite well. I think this is a new style of politics that he is leaning into. Remember, people in this country have got no idea who Andy Burnham is. So he needs to introduce himself. He needs to do these silly little what's your favourite pub snack thing to give people a sense of a cut of his jib. And social media short-form video is the most effective way of communicating to the masses now in an era where more people get the news from social media than from any newspaper.
Fraser, it's been really helpful. Thank you. Fraser Nelson, columnist at The Times, who writes today, Keir had a good story, but it's Andy's to tell.
I tell you what is interesting. I was in the House of Lords on Thursday speaking to a Conservative peer. The Tories don't want an election. They're in such a state. I mean, they'll say they do if they're pushed, but they are in such bad shape that actually you don't hear this pressure from the opposite side of the House to get Andy Burnham to get a mandate, because they know that they're in dire straits at the moment. It was just really interesting hearing an insider saying, no, we haven't got the money, we haven't got the resources, and we certainly haven't got the popularity at the moment.
And actually, when asked, I mean, I interviewed Kemi Badenoch the day of the Makerfield by-election results, and she said, no, we don't want a general election.
Interesting.
Because
normally
they know
you
right
get
now
them
they won't be able to
hammering
fight
them,
one.
Yeah, well, there you go.